Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Guidance by Tova Podcast. I am Tova, and welcome to my podcast. So, since this is the first episode of said podcast, I'm going to lay down some ground rules. So, ground rule number 1, I'm going to be real on this here show. This is not going to be a polished production except for the cute intro song. You're going to hear some background noise. The audio is not going to be perfect. I'm going to say There's going to be weird distractions that happen. And I'm not going to apologize for them. Because what else are we doing here other than being real? So, I put up a text document on my Patreon detailing kind of the general theme of what I'm going to be talking about. But I don't know if I want to go by that outline per se for this. I was mostly just kind of like nailing down the idea that I wanted to talk about and giving like some general context. And I mean, it is a good document. I'm not going to lie. It's a good write-up, but what I think I actually want to do is really just delve into the topic from my personal experience with said topic, which I am kind of an expert at this. I'm not going to lie. So really, I'm just going to get into it. So this podcast topic is the importance of taking the time to examine your past experiences and to gather some level of wisdom from them, and then to utilize said wisdom to make new decisions in the way that you go about various quote-unquote triggering situations in your life. So, you might have heard that long ago there was something called COVID lockdown. But even before COVID lockdown happened, I have been a person who really gets like very nostalgic, very ruminating about, certain time periods of my life, and they'll kind of just like ebb and flow between different parts of my life. I'm not so much like that anymore, and here's why. It's because of COVID lockdown. So basically what happened was I did not leave my tiny apartment in the middle of downtown Nashville, Tennessee, for 5 months. I did not leave the grounds of my apartment complex. So during that time, I pretty much just went out on my balcony every night and yammered on to myself about whatever it was that was on my mind. And what ended up happening was I basically ended up kind of choosing a certain time period of my life, and then I went and looked up like writings that I did during that time, or sometimes pictures, but not as often. It was mostly just stuff that I was writing, but I'm a big journaler, so I would just go back and look at like my journals, or I had Tumblr blogs for the longest time, and I kind of used them as journals, like password protected Tumblr blogs. I know it's cringe, but it was like the 2010s, so it is what it is. But so I would essentially like consciously choose, okay, I'm going to look at this section of my past. And I would go through and be like, okay, so I wrote like this, whatever. How do I feel about the way that I was feeling when I wrote that? Do I remember what I was feeling when I wrote that? Do I, have any sort of, like how have my feelings changed about like this situation or this person who was like the romantic focus of my life at that time? That was a big part of it too. Not even gonna like try to hide that one. Time periods of my life were oftentimes, broken up into sections dependent upon whoever I was like romantically obsessed with at the time. And, I'm just not going to deny that, because that was just, and we'll do another podcast episode. I actually have one planned that's going to look into a little bit more about like, okay, this is how romantic connections or lack thereof, can spiritually like completely like throw you off course or like get you on the right path. I've had both. So I'm going to go into that in a later podcast, but for now, let me get back to the point. So I started asking myself all of these questions, and I think my only mistake was that I didn't write anything down, but I do have some voice memos, which whenever I'll go to events to do readings, and if I get the sense that somebody needs to do some journaling, but I get the sense that they're not really going to sit down and be writing like that, I will encourage them to just take out their phone and talk into it, to be able to go back and examine, whatever it is, whatever state of mind that they're in at the time, and then proceed, with this, like, sort of healing mechanism, this like, self-therapy, essentially. So I do be telling people to do that, because I did it myself, and it honestly did work for me. And here's how. Processing what happened actually fully. Allowing yourself to cry, to, get mad, to laugh about it, You have to allow the emotion to come through. Because what is like repressed or suppressed, weird, like like what is like the material, if you will. Just imagine this. Do a little visualization exercise with me. What is like the atoms that makes up the molecules that make up the creature that is like your defense mechanisms that aren't like serving you anymore. And that is like your emotional responses to various stimuli. That's where it all comes from. And where do those emotions come from? They come from your thoughts. So, and it's crazy. So if you know anything about me, you'll know that I am a big fan of Wayne Dyer. And I was at a thrift store looking for a tarot book and came across Wayne Dyer's very first book, which is called Your Erroneous Zones. And it was published in 1976. And I was like, for $1.50, I will buy the heck out of this book. So I did. And I've been reading like just a few pages every night since I bought it. I didn't even buy, like, I bought it pretty recently, like no more than about a week ago. And it's just been like incredible. And since it's his first book, I think that he really put a lot of thought into condensing the information in a way that was going to be, very straightforward, which I appreciated, because my only complaint about his writings is that sometimes he will like talk kind of all over the place about something without kind of like fully getting to the point, or like he'll, he's just a little too wordy for me sometimes, but that's nothing against the guy. I mean, he's amazing. Always has been, always will be. Love that guy. He changed my life for the better. I own so many of his books, so I don't want to say anything bad about him, but that's just my one thing. And this first book is just spectacular. So I forgot where I was going with that, but there's a lot in there that I resonate with And that's kind of just, like, confirming for me that the things that I have done, or, like, the ways that I have gone about, like, quote-unquote healing myself, that I was doing the right thing, which is huge, in my opinion. It's just, like, a really nice confirmation. So I'm here to pass that wisdom off to you through my anecdotal experience, which is, a little more, like, if you're in my audience, you're probably around my age, and you're probably, more likely to be female. I'm not gonna lie. My branding is pretty feminine. So, I mean, if you're a dude, welcome. You're not allowed, but I'm just saying my branding is pretty feminine. So, but anyway, I'm getting very far from the point. But it's fine. We're here to have a good time. We're just giving you something to listen to on your morning commute. Just pretend that I am the radio. I am the radio announcer. So you're allowing these emotions. I just go right back to it. Okay. So you're allowing these emotions to come up when you're thinking actively about these past experiences that have happened to you, these traumatic things that happened to you, and sometimes it can be very difficult, and sometimes you can't do it. And don't force yourself to do it, but when you feel like you're ready to, like, go into something and start really processing it, I really recommend that you give this a try. Because I think that this is the fastest way for people to be able to, kind of, like, see things from, like, outside the fishbowl or whatever, so to speak, and kind of just be like, oh, yeah, I can see why I acted this way in response to what happened here, or, I can see why, like, I would go on to, like, act this way in relationships because of this thing that happened to me. And the next thing that you're going to want to do, so step 1, start thinking about the thing, whatever it is. Step 2, allow yourself to feel the emotions that come up naturally, disclaimer, don't force yourself to do anything that's going to be harmful to you. Obviously, you know yourself better than anybody else. I'm not here to tell you what to do. This is just an idea. I'm not giving you medical advice, blah, blah. So, step number 3 is going to be, I just had it. I just had step 3. Oh, silly me. It's acceptance. So after you have, basically come down from your emotional processing, maybe you had, like, a solid cry, maybe you, like, listened to, like, oh, dude, that actually, reminds me of another very important part of, what helped me was, I don't know about you guys, but certain time periods in my life do have kind of a soundtrack. So I will pull up, well, not really actively anymore, maybe sometimes, but during COVID lockdown and preceding that also, but to a less conscious extent, I actually have a bunch of playlists on my Spotify that are specific time periods of my life. So I can go and listen to some music that I listened to during that time, and I can essentially, hold on guys, there was a bug on my phone. So I can essentially kind of transport myself into the time period, into my mindset, stuff like that. And it's actually really helpful. So that's just, a side note. If you want to have a more sort of immersive experience doing this exercise. But step number 3 is acceptance. So what you're going to want to do is, and I recommend doing some research on this topic too. It's a little bit more than I wanted to talk about today, but you are going to want to, like, give yourself the closure, the love, the acceptance that you did not receive when the traumatic thing happened, or after the traumatic thing happened. What this is going to do is this is going to, like, well, ultimately make you, like, a much more emotionally self-sufficient person. And obviously that doesn't happen overnight, but you're just going to be way more capable of, like, being there for yourself, you know, knowing what to do when you feel a certain bad way, knowing how to react to be able to self-soothe, stuff like that. And it's hard for me to give you exact instructions on this part because it's going to be, like, up to you. You have control over this situation. Like, the great thing about this, you know, examining your past, whatever, kind of going deeper into this past trauma and processing it, and then doing the healing act of accepting, you know, this, what happened, or, well, I would say that's pretty essential, accepting what happened. You probably already have, you know, but I don't know, maybe the wound is still fresh, I have no idea, but it's really up to you. So, you can do whatever it is that you feel is the thing that you would have needed when the traumatic thing happened. And after that, what I typically did was I would, like, do some kind of, like, a self-care act, or like change something to lighten the mood, or do something celebratory. So imagine you're me and it's COVID lockdown and you're sitting on your teeny tiny balcony and you just got done processing some weird traumatic thing that happened to you in, like, high school or something. And you've forgiven yourself and you've forgiven, you know, the people who you felt had wronged you or whatever. And then you're just sitting there and you're like, okay, well, now what? Well, one of the most healing things that you can do, in my opinion, is revel in the victory of having overcome that. Because really what that does is it solidifies it. And I know I just said, like, do a self-care act, whatever. And I think that is good. But I really think that throwing yourself a little victory party is a super high vibe thing to do. And it's something that can, like, really close off, like, the like, negative energy and then, like, bring in, like, this wave of positive energy. So basically, you know, you can put on, like, different music, you know, or, like, change up the environment that you're in or something like that. I do recommend that you do this whole process alone, because then you can fully relax and be yourself and whatever, and nobody else is going to interfere or bother you while you're doing this. So, that's kind of overall the process that I went through, and I did that, like, over and over and over again, because I was just sitting there the whole COVID lockdown. And honestly, it was like a gift from the universe that entire time. Even though I feel like I probably should have, like, not only stayed in my apartment for 5 months. I probably shouldn't have done that. But even so, man, did I learn a lot. And you know what it ended up teaching me was what my priorities actually were. And it helped me to reevaluate where I was in my life at that time, like during COVID lockdown. And then it helps me think about, okay, you know, this is everything that's happened to me in my past, and this is how it's affected me, and I don't want it to affect me like this anymore. And you know what, I actually want to change my situation for the better now. it was so what it really did was it empowered me to be able to make these leaps, into the unknown that I was previously I had all these barriers up against. And I can tell you right now that it was essential for me to change my situation, because I was on a pathway to just letting everybody else in my life do stuff for me, putting in very little effort into things because I was way too scared to do anything out of my normal routine, which was toxic. I was very much on a pathway that was not ideal, and that opportunity allowed me to learn in a way that I feel very grateful for now, because now I can teach you guys about it. So that's mostly what I wanted to talk about today. I appreciate you guys watching. No, well, not watching, but watching with your ears. I appreciate you guys watching with your ears. And I do post once a week a little snippet of what I'm thinking about talking about on the old Patreon. It's just in the $1 tier. I also post my new and full moon research notes, which are great. I posted one over there today, and it is really good. So I definitely recommend checking that out. And I have it set up right now that you can join the Patreon for a week for free. So if you just want to hop over there and just take a look at what I've already done and see if you like it, you can do that, and you don't even have to give me any money. So, but shilling aside, I was trying to make this a no-shill zone. Because I hate when content creators just sit at the beginning or the end of their video and they just start shilling. So that was bad. I'll try not to do that anymore. But, you guys have to be honest with me. If I start shilling and getting out of control, you got to rein me back in, because the Guidance by Tova podcast any of my content is not going to be, just trying to yammer on about my offerings, because I'm sure you guys are smart enough to look around and see all the offerings with your eyeballs if you're really interested. So I'm not going to bug you anymore about it, and actually I'm not going to bug you anymore at all. So yeah, thank you guys very much for listening, and I will see you again next week for episode 2 of the Guidance by Tova podcast. Have a fantastic week. The Gemini new moon is on Thursday, and I will have a video up for that soon, so stay tuned.